Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining Farm Talks. We are just connecting Mr. Srinath and we will start shortly. Thank you.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I think we have just a few people just joining us. I just got a ping, so just let's wait for about 30 seconds to a minute, and then we will go live. Hey, thanks, Akshay, and sorry for that abrupt play of the video. It was intended to be played a little later, but nevertheless, for those who have joined, I hope you got a sense of what we do. But what I would like to start today is with a small presentation about Hosachiguru, and then get into a little more details about our newly launched farm Sambrahma, which is located about 1 hour's drive from Electronic City. But before we get into that, let me tell you something about what we do and how you could be a part of Hosachiguru and how you can become a co-farmer. At Hosachiguru, we essentially manage farmlands, and the idea is that you could buy a farm, and we take care of the entire management of the farm in a hassle-free manner. It is just not about owning a farm, but it's also about experiencing the farm. So whatever we do at the farm, we ensure that you get some rewards. Either it could be veggies delivered to your home every week, or it could be a nice farm life experience that you could have, right? So the entire aspect of farm life and maintenance at the farm is taken care by the company. Now, today we'll speak about a couple of things in terms of what does it take to own a managed farmland, or what does it take to manage a farmland, and then we'll get into what is a managed farmland, right? The first aspect is the legal aspects of ownership, which we will cover upon the various states, how they work, and whether you're eligible to buy a farmland or not is what we will look at. The other aspects we will look at is what are the resources required for us to buy a farmland, and or at least identify the resources that we require to make sure that the farmland that we buy is going to be successful, and what are the types of farming one can pursue, what is it that Hosachiguru does, and we'll try and also understand what is the goal that you have in mind, so that you could accordingly choose the kind of farmland that you would want, right? So these are some of the aspects that we will cover. Coming to the first aspect, we will just take 5 minutes in each of these slides, right? Give you an overview, and then you could also research more about it. So whenever you're buying a farmland, it's very important to look into the state laws, right? For some of the states have very restricted rules. I mean, in the sense, if you look at Karnataka a couple of months back, unless you were a farmer and unless your non-agricultural income was less than 25 lakhs, you are not eligible to own a farmland. So there was a law called 79A and 79B, which made sure that you're eligible to buy the land only if you meet these two criteria. You or your forefather should have been a farmer, and your non-agricultural income should not be more than 25 lakhs. These were the two important aspects. Now, with the new law, where these both things have been repealed, anybody can own a farmland in Karnataka, and the same law applies in Andhra and in Tamil Nadu. As long as you're a citizen of the country, you're free to buy a land, agricultural land. Even a company or an LLP can also buy a land in any of these three states. But again, if you look at states like Kerala, Maharashtra, they have their own rules. For instance, Maharashtra, unless you're a farmer, you're not allowed to buy a farmland, right? So you all must have heard about Amitabh Bachchan owning a farmland and then giving up because he was not a farmer. So again, every state to state has its own laws. Then on the construction also differs from state to state. For instance, if you're buying a land in Karnataka, if you have say 10,000 square feet of a farmland, you can construct only 1,000 square feet. If you have to do a farmhouse or if you have to do any sort of construction on your land. Whereas in Tamil Nadu, it can go up to 30%. Right? In Andhra and Karnataka, it is 10%. In Tamil Nadu, it is 30%. The other aspect of land ownership is that you have to be an Indian citizen. If you're not an Indian citizen, you can't buy a farmland which has open field cultivation. However, if you're doing something like say a greenhouse or a nursery or anything that has a protected environment, it could be hydroponics, aquaponics. Even if you're an NRI or even if you're a foreign national, you can continue to buy the land, provided you do something which is high-tech cultivation, right? Where the infrastructure demands you that you make sure that everything is all the cultivations are done in a protected manner. So if you comply for that, even if you're a foreign citizen, you're eligible to buy a farmland, and there is no permission required. It is under the automatic or direct route. So you just put in the funds, and then you can set up your farming venture. The other aspect is the construction and commercial activity. On agricultural land, you cannot do any commercial activity unless you seek permission from the local authority. If it is in Karnataka, it is from the local DC that you have to seek permission. Like if you want to set up a commercial venture of a farmhouse, right? Then you need a permission for that. Similarly, a lot of people buy lands thinking that they can freely start leasing the land to Airbnb and stuff like that. It is not allowed unless you have specific permission or unless you convert the land into non-agriculture and then use it for commercial activities. And then conversion of land also depends upon various factors on where the land is located. If it is located in a green zone, then you cannot convert the land. Only lands which are located in a yellow zone can be converted. So you'll have to keep that aspect in mind as well. However, these rules of yellow zone and green zone are applicable only for Karnataka and not applicable for Tamil Nadu and Andhra, because Tamil Nadu and Andhra, as long as you have a road connectivity, you can go and apply for conversion of land. The other aspects of ownership is the income and tax benefits that one has when you buy a farmland. Suppose you buy a farmland which is 8 kilometers outside Taluka headquarter, anywhere across the country, right? If it is 8 kilometers outside the Taluka headquarter, it is not considered a capital asset. It is considered a revenue asset, and any capital gains that arise out of selling the land. So you bought a land at 10 lakhs today and you sold it at 1 crore after a couple of years. You don't have to pay any capital gains tax on such appreciation that you realize. Same is the case with agriculture income. Any income that you realize out of open field cultivation, which could be growing of any of the veggies or the timber or the fruits, is tax exempt. Now, if you did it in a closed cultivation, again, if it is horticulture, it is tax exempt. But if you did something like a plantation and all of that in a company's name, then you will have to pay taxes for it. By the way, even plantation land, which is coffee land or tea land or rubber plantation, is also allowed for NRIs and foreign nationals to own. Now, some of the important aspects before you buy a land, right? It depends upon what type of cultivation you do, and based on that, you'll have to look at the kind of soil that you have to examine, right? Typically, soils in our part of the country, which we call a subtropical climate, where the rainfalls are anywhere between 500 to 1200 mm, the soil pH is anywhere between 7 to 9, right? And a very good soil would be closer to 7, which is neutral. And if it is an acidic soil, it would be lower than 7. Like if you typically go to, say, Malnad areas like Chikmagalur or Coorg, where the rainfalls are heavy, the soils tend to be more acidic in nature. So there are some plantations which will do very well in acidic soil. There are some plantations which will do very well in neutral to medium alkaline soils. But the moment the soils are highly alkaline, there is not much that you can do. In the sense, if your soil pH is above 9, right, we would call it as a bad soil, and it is not viable for cultivation of most crops. So you have to check the soil based on the type of cultivation that you will have to do. Ideally, in our areas, which is closer to Bangalore, you should look at soil anywhere between 7 to 8, 8.5, and most of your horticulture crops can be grown. Again, you'll also have to look at what type of crops you're growing and look at the soil, which should be red or black. Like for instance, a red soil is a soil which tends to drain off water easily, whereas a black soil tends to hold on to water. So there are some crops, like for instance, when you do a pomegranate or a papaya, they don't like stagnant water. So you would have to prefer a red soil. But if you look at a crop like a banana or a paddy or groundnut, or it could be your couple of crops which are okay to kind of have water, maybe even a coconut for that matter, would do fairly well in a black soil, right? But whereas if you want a well-drained soil, you have to look at red soil. So there are two aspects. One is the type of plantation that you want to do will depend upon the red or a black soil that you'll have to choose. Depending upon that, then you can look at the pH. The other aspect is the amount of water that is available in the land, right? One is we all can design our lands to be dependent upon rainfall. But when you do that, then it's a longer process, and typically people do that out of passion. And if you have to do it on a commercial scale, it becomes very difficult for you to look at just rainfall, especially when you do something like a hybrid variety of papaya or a pomegranate, where almost 30 liters of water is required per plant per day. So imagine you have, say, 1 acre of pomegranate, it will command 30 liters into 400 trees. That's almost about 12,000 liters a day. So if you're doing 10 acres, you're looking at about close to 1.2 lakh liters of water, right? Which means we'll have to understand what is the borewell water output there, what is the amount of electricity available, calculate whether it is sufficient for you, and not just for 1 year or 2 years, but can it be sufficient for the next 5 years, 10 years? You'll have to assess that, and you'll also have to take steps to make sure that you're continuing to recharge your groundwater and your borewell water, so that in the next 4 or 5 years, you can continue to manage that sort of water requirement. So those are some of the aspects that you need to take care. But at Hosachiguru, we primarily focus on more sustainable practices like permaculture, where we depend heavily on the surface water and to some extent on the borewell water as well. The other aspect is your labor and expertise. Now, when you're doing any sort of farming, people tend to believe that, if a farmer can do it, an uneducated farmer can do it, it should be easy for me. But today there's a lot of science behind every aspect of farming. It could be in terms of irrigation strategy, it could be in terms of soil, it could be in terms of water management, it could be in terms of labor management. There's a lot of, or in terms of the cultural practices for every crop, right? There's a lot of expertise that goes into that. So you will have to make sure that you find the right expert who can help you or who can guide you before you step into this space. And it is also important to understand the kind of labor availability, because if you have to do anything in and around Bangalore, say within an hour's drive from Bangalore, your labor is always going to be expensive and nothing short of 500 rupees a day. But the moment you go, say, about 2 to 3 hours away from Bangalore, your labor cost could come down by 50% to maybe about 250 rupees a day. So depending upon the type of cultivation that you want to do, you should look at where you have to do it. For instance, if you have a very intense cultivation of papaya, right? If you're going to do this around Bangalore, there is no way it is going to be viable, because the labor costs are going to be very high for you. Now, I briefly touched upon the different types of farming. So the high-tech farming is the greenhouse, hydroponics, aquaponics. All of these types of farmings are very high on capital, anywhere between 50 lakh rupees an acre to about 2 crores per acre is what you would end up spending if you have to set up these units, which is a greenhouse, hydroponics, or an aquaponics unit. And most of these farms so far, wherever they've been set up, except for the greenhouse, hydroponics and aquaponics are in very initial stage. Not many people have scaled up or set up commercial ventures in these areas. But greenhouse, primarily on floriculture and exotic vegetables, a lot of farmers have been doing it and they've been successful. And there have also been a lot of ups and downs. So the farmers who have been successful are people who have been able to establish a good market linkage and who've been able to adapt to the latest techniques for growing. For instance, people use grow lights, people induce carbon dioxide, do various stuffs to enhance the production. And they also, moderate temperatures, moderate humidity, make sure all of those things are taken care. And with over a period of time, they've been able to achieve good success on a year-on-year basis as far as greenhouse goes. Hydroponics and aquaponics are a lot more higher on capital and are in very nascent stage, at least in India. And anybody who's been successful is done it over a smaller piece of land, maybe a quarter acre or maybe 5,000 square feet. And they've been able to establish market linkage to the apartments or housing societies. Right? So they have been successful. But anybody who's trying to sell it to maybe a mandi or a B2B place have really not been successful in terms of running the operations. The other type of farming is the open field, which is the vegetable farming, say onion, tomato, potato. When people grow these things, it is primarily the husband and wife who own the land, who tend to cultivate on the land, and who tend to take care of all the activities. It could be in terms of sowing the seed, in terms of staking, in terms of harvesting and taking it to the markets. So they are the ones who've been taking care of it. So for them, it is about 1 minute. Just hold on. So for them, it has been about doing the farming themselves and working on the farm. Now, if you have to do that, if you have to hire them, right, their efficiency would definitely go down, and you will not be eligible for a lot of incentives that they are eligible for in the open market, and it would be a kind of a challenge for you to make the buck of it, right? So as a lifestyle, maybe vegetable farming is good in a small scale, but the moment you do it at a large scale, unless you mechanize it, unless you go for hybrid varieties, it's very challenging. But on the other hand, if you have these high-yielding fruit orchards like a pomegranate or a dragon fruit or a papaya or banana, and if you're able to manage a 10 to 15 acre farm with a supervisor and being some sort of a semi-passive farmer, you still can make some buck, because these tend to generally yield anywhere between 2 to 4 lakhs an acre. So if you have like about 10 acres, it's about 40 lakhs of revenue, whereas your costings are about 30-40%, right? So you can look at easily making about a lakh or two per acre, provided the scale is available. But the moment it is 1 acre, 2 acre, 3 acre, then you can't afford a supervisor, so you will have to be into the farming full time. Then so all of these, the first three that I spoke about, in a way are not very sustainable models, in the sense you will have to look at chemical farming, you will have to look at you'll have to look at hybrid varieties of fruits and hybrid varieties of vegetables for it to be viable commercially, and hence I would say it is not very sustainable. But for somebody who is looking to make a living of it, they have no choice, because if you go to the sustainable way of doing things, right, where you're taking native varieties of seeds, like a native variety of papaya would give you maybe about 10 to 12 kg per tree, whereas a hybrid variety of papaya would give you almost 50 to 60 kg per tree. But the hybrid variety of papaya, if you take the seed of that papaya and try and grow a tree, these are called terminator seeds. So the moment you grow them, you'll only get vegetative growth, but you'll not get a fruit, right? So what happens is that these terminator seeds are sold by companies, and they profit from it. And generally, when you have such high yielding varieties, there are going to be pest attacks, there are going to be bacterial attacks, there are going to be fungal attacks, which will call for you to use chemicals, because managing the hybrid variety through organic means is very challenging. So you will have to look at the native varieties, and in the native varieties, the yields are generally lesser, and for you to it may not be viable for you to use the chemicals firstly, but at the same time, you also will not need to be using the chemicals, because the stress on the plants are much lesser. So if you look at all the bananas that we eat in the markets today are all tissue culture based, right? Each of those trees yield you about 30-40 kg of that bunch, whereas the native variety yields you maybe only about 15-20 kgs, but it's a lot more nutritious, and it needs a lot lesser management. So if you look at the way we do farming is on a basis of called permaculture, where we try and emulate the way forests have evolved. So we try and take various types of crops and grow them in a very symbiotic way. For instance, if you have the tall trees at one level, you have the medium trees, which are like, for instance, the tall trees like a jackfruit or a jamun or a teak, right, which are all at one level. Then you have the next level, which could be a canopy tree, which could be something like a mango, custard apple, or a chiku at the next level, and smaller trees, which are papaya, drumsticks, banana at the next level. So if you were to put all of these things together in a layer method, right, each of them don't compete with each other, and they tend to support each other in terms of nutrient requirements, in terms of the growing as a support plant, right? And apart from the yielding trees, we also had a lot of support trees, like it could be a pongemia, it could be sesbania, it could be the cassarina. All of these plants, which are also supporting plants, are added here to create the biodiversity and to create the support system for the yielding trees. So that's how permaculture model is evolved. We'll try and speak a little more about it when we get into Sambrahma farm. And the other way is the agroforestry, where you grow timber, right? And these timber trees are a lot more resilient, because you hardly require much of water for irrigation, and at the same time, you don't require to chemically intervene into the land, right? So that is the other way you can look at in terms of farming. So these are the various types of farming. At Hosachiguru, we do permaculture and agroforestry primarily in terms of the types of farming that we do. So what is important is, when you're buying a farmland, what is the goal that you have in mind, right? Whether you want to look at a farmland from an investment perspective and reap benefits out of doing farming, or do you want to look at just a farm life experience, right? So you'll have to answer that question. And if your answer is the first one, where you want to look at it as a way of life and you want to kind of reap economic benefits out of it, you may have to adopt the first three types. But for which it is very difficult if you're a passive farmer. You will have to be a full-time farmer, and you'll have to look at it. Because as a passive farmer, it is highly impractical for you to look at making money by allowing somebody else to manage. Because the nuances are too many, and the moment somebody else is managing, you have a challenge. Of course, there are some companies which also adapt, which also do manage farmlands with these sort of cultivations. But at Hosachiguru, we are primarily focused on permaculture and agroforestry, which are a lot more resilient, because for us, sustainability and resilience is more important than the commercial activity of farming. So, like I said, if you're looking at a farm life experience, if you're looking at a lot more sustainable models to invest in, Hosachiguru is the place. And of course, real estate is always there, which is there in every aspect of farming, whether you invest it in the commercial farming or in this sort of farming. Now, at Hosachiguru, what we essentially do is we cherry pick a farmland. So when you're buying a farmland, there are various aspects that are important, like we mentioned, in terms of labor, soil, water, legal aspects, road access, right? Making sure all of these things are there is what we do. And once we have bought the land onto the company's name, we fence the land, right? We fence the land, then carve it off into smaller parcels of half acre, 1 acre, quarter acre. And based on the choice of trees that you want on the land, it is designed and it is developed, right? And we manage it for you. The only challenge, the only constraint is that we do only tree-based plantation on your land, we don't get into intense vegetables growing on your land, but we have a common area which is dedicated for vegetables growing for all the landowners. So as a company, our vision is to fulfill the dreams of a green enthusiast in owning a managed farmland. What we ensure is that the land is secure in terms of fencing, in terms of legal, in terms of CCTV surveillance. We ensure whatever we do on the farmland is sustainable, not just in terms of organic practices or making sure that the soil and the water is the soil is enhanced or the water is the water levels have increased from year to year. But we also ensure whatever we do today, we should be in a position to do the same things for the next 10 years, 15 years, and keep our costs low, right? So we make sure that the entire farming operations become sustainable, and whatever we do, we do it based on various data points that we have collected over the last 10 years, and we continue to collect in every farm. So every farm has sensors which tell us, what is the weather that is there, what is the soil moisture, whether we should irrigate, or what type of sprays that we should take. All of that is kind of given to us by data, because we have installed our sensors in various farms, and all our mechanized equipments also have sensors that enable us to understand what's happening on ground. And all of this is visible to us at the office. We have a command center where we look through all the farm operations, because everything is connected. And we are also able to provide this information on a real-time basis to the landowners. So we have something known as the My Farm app, where every owner of Hosachiguru gets access to that, and he can understand what's happening on his land, whether what is the schedule of activities and what are the completed activities is available to him on a real-time basis. And the most important aspect of farmland ownership is the rewards, right? So at Hosachiguru, once you buy a farmland, every week you get veggies delivered to your home. So all the veggies from all our farms come to a centralized location. From there, it is redistributed to the owners, and there are some logistics costs involved there, but every week you get 6 to 7 kg of Veggie Basket delivered to your home, as in when once you become a landowner. The other aspect is that you also get access to the retreat and the resort area. So every farm of ours has a beautiful resort which is eco-friendly, built using sustainable materials. We also have a petting center. We have environmental education center at every farm. So you get access to these amenities. So once you buy, say, in Sambrahma, you could also go and visit our Unnati farm or Abhiruddhi farm, which are located elsewhere, once you're a landowner at any one of the farms. So you get access to all of these farms on a regular basis. And we have events. Every year we have about 6 events. The last event we celebrated was Sankranti. And we were due for a mango harvest, but because of the pandemic, we had to postpone it. So every year we have about six events that all our owners get together and celebrate at any of our farms. So as a company, so far we have done 1,000 plus acres. Sambrahma, the farm which we have recently launched, is about 200 plus acres. That brings us to about 1,200 acres. And we have a 600 plus customer base. And on average, we add 1 to 2 customers every day as we speak with the new projects. And we have planted over 1 million trees as a company. So we also continue to manage about 3 lakh trees in terms of plantations across our farms. So some of the lands where we've just planted and the landowner is maintaining. So a lot of trees is also a lot of lands where we are continuing to maintain, which is about 1,000 acres, which we continue to maintain for various owners. Akshay, can you just replay that video, Akshay, once more? For the benefit of the people who have joined in now, I would like you all to. So this is a short 4-minute video, which will give you an idea about what Hosachiguru actually provides as a service. And if you have any questions, please put it in the comments. We will address one by one. But post this video, I'll take you to the project Sambrahma, the vision for Sambrahma, and then we'll get back to the questions. Thank you so much.
It seems we have some technical difficulties. I'll quickly get Mr. Srinath back online.
Yeah, am I audible now?
Yes, Mr. Srinath, you're back.
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, I was just saying that prior to this, before Akshay shared the video, I forgot to share my screen on the presentation. So I'll make that available to all the people who have joined. If you can just drop in your numbers, I will share the presentation. I think there was some challenge where I did not share my presentation, and then I realized it a little later. But nevertheless, coming to Sambrahma, which is the new farm that we are just launching now. It is a 200-acre farm, which is located near Kota, and it is about 1 hour drive from Electronic City. This is a farm which is focused on regenerative agriculture. So what we mean by regenerative agriculture is that whatever we do at the farm, right, it is going to enhance the value of the soil, enhance the value of the land, and it is going to continue to give life to the soil or give life to the plants based on the kind of cultivations that we are going to do. Right, so we take up a principle called permaculture, like I said, where it's also known as permanent agriculture, where we grow different varieties of trees, which could be productive and non-productive. Non-productive because a lot of trees are grown to kind of create the biodiversity and to restore the ecosystem, which also act as a support plants to the productive trees. So in every farm plot, right, you will see a swale, you will see a stream passing through, you will see some wild zones which are set up in the farm, so that the land can recoup itself from from where it is, and it can continue to have a kind of life within itself. So the overall principles is to kind of observe what is available in nature and interact with the system without spoiling it, right? And whatever problems that exist there in terms of terrains, in terms of the flora that already exist, is a solution for us. We don't look at it as a problem. Right, and we start with creating interventions in terms of swales, in terms of boomerangs, in terms of streams across the farm, right? So that we intervene to be able to sequestrate more water to create that flora and fauna. We also practice redundancy, right? So if there are things that are being redone, right, without our knowledge, we make sure that we're able to. If it is good for the nature, we're able to replicate that in various aspects of the land, right? And without spoiling the existing slopes, without spoiling the existing flora of the land, without trying to level it, we make sure that we're able to enhance the value of the land, right? And that is the whole idea. And of course, the other important aspect is to make sure that we are also getting a yield from that land in terms of the food forest that we are growing. And in whatever way we do it, we mimic nature. So there are various designs and patterns that we have evolved for every farm. Every farm plot is going to be unique in the way it is going to be structured. It is not like a typical rows and columns kind of a farm plot that you see that is done in a commercial cultivation. So we have done a detailed environment study, understanding the various energy flows, understanding the various water flows. It took us almost 2 to 3 months to look at that. I will share some of the aspects which are available in a short while. So the land is located in Krishnagiri district of Tamil Nadu, and this is the vision for Sambrahma. So whatever we do, we work towards this vision, right? It could be in terms of enhancing the water. It could be in terms of providing a memorable farm life experience for the landowners, right? We also follow what is known as the Synthropic farming method, which I explained briefly, where we have different layers of trees that are grown on your land, so that they don't compete with each other and they support each other. And our efforts are to kind of build a soil, right? Wherever the soil structure is weak, we continue to add a lot of humus into the soil. So we also do various methods like Biochar Farming. We also do the natural principles such as Jivamrita, Panchagavya. All of these things are done on a regular basis to enhance the soil. So we have a team of environmental health engineers who work out of our office. Their only focus is to make sure that every year we are adding more carbon to the soil, and we are enhancing the soil quality, and we are also enhancing the water level in the ground. So these are the things that they do on a constant basis. And whatever is the vegetables that are grown in this farm and across other farms come to a collection center in Bangalore. From here, it is redistributed to the landowners on a weekly basis. So once you become a landowner, you can expect to get organic veggies from your own farms delivered to your home on a weekly basis. And this farm per se, Sambrahma, will have at least close to 1 lakh trees that will be grown there, different variety of trees. So then it is, you can say, almost like a forest that will be there. And initially we'll have a lot of support plants which will create the ecosystem, and over a period of time the productive plants will take over and create its own ecosystem, that what we call as a food forest. So it is going to take at least 4 or 5 years for the farm to evolve into a proper food forest. And our vision is to make sure that every farm plot is a food forest for its owner. So this is the map of base map of Sambrahma. So if you, I'm not sure if it's clearly visible, but there is a huge elevation gap between various various lands. In fact, when we bought this land, and unfortunately, when we bought the land, there was a mound here which was chopped off because of some government work, and now we're restoring this aspect, and this is going to become our resort area. Whereas all the fertile lands that you see here are going to be the farm plots, which will be there across these areas. So we'll also share the farm plot diagram. I'll just run through all of these things, but just to give you an idea, the average rainfall in this area is about almost 1200 mm, which is slightly higher than Bangalore, and the average temperature in these areas are about at least 1 to 2 degrees cooler than Bangalore. So we've also kind of understood what is the degradation that has happened there in terms of groundwater, in terms of the fires that have happened in that area, and we've also done an elevation study, the water flow. But so when we do a sector study, right, we understand the sun, the direction of the sun, how to plant the trees in which direction, what is the wind direction, and what are the chances of fire and from where fires could enter. So we even do our peripheries in such a way that we make it fireproof, and what are the different types of pollutants that are there, what are the different types of fauna that is there, and which are the lands which have good views. So we mark them as premium lands. So in essentially, if you look at, these are the various flow directions that we have for the wind. For the water, we already have a lot of natural streams in the land, but they have to be defined. So we have kept almost 10 acres of land throughout the land as areas for water, in terms of ponds and in terms of larger swales. But having said that, every farm plot also will have a swale within that plot to conserve water. So the way the slope is that if you're able to capture all the rainwater here and store it in a place, it is more than enough for us to irrigate the entire land without having to dig a single borewell, right? That is the vision. But for us to define the various pathways and for us to get water into one place and make sure that the soil is being recouped will take about a year or two. During such time we use the borewells, but after which we may not need to use the borewells. So we are doing various rainwater harvesting. This thing. Let me open the site map for you all. So this is the plotting map. So you'll see that there are streams that run across the various plots that we have done, and wherever the streams are not running, we'll also have swales within the farm. So is there a model farm? Yeah. So this is the overall layout of the farm. This is the resort area which I spoke about, where the soil is heavily degraded. It comes up to this area, and these are the plots that are there. So we have water bodies across. So this is one water body. These are other water bodies that are there. These are some water bodies and streams that run across the farm which connect to these water bodies. And what you see, these yellow lines which are there neighboring the streams are known as wild zones. So these wild zones are areas where we plant thick forests. So, and we don't intervene there, because if you look at a lot of these animals, which could be birds or which could be bunnies or which could be honeybees, they don't come into the managed farm plots, because there we regularly prune and take care of the mulching operations. Whereas in these wild zones, we leave nature to take over. So we absolutely don't intervene into these areas, so that your birds and your bees or your bunnies can actually make their habitat there. They can build their nest or they can build their furrows there, so that there is a nice life which is there for them without intervention of people. So across the streams we have created these wild zones. And so suppose you buy a plot here, right, in F25, and you have 1.06 acres here, and you want us to create a wild zone in one of the areas, we can create a wild zone in one of the areas. But what we would recommend is that every plot which is more than half acre should have at least 10 to 15% of wild zone, and will have one or two swales within the farms to conserve the water. So this is how the entire farm is set up. Just give me a minute. I'll just open the brochure as well. Just 1 second. We have Sambrahma. I have to. Yeah. So this is the brochure of Sambrahma. We'll share it with you all after the discussion. So this land is actually 45 minutes from Electronic City, and it's located, like I said, near Degni Kota. It is not en route to Hosur, but it's kind of a triangle between Hosur and Electronic City and Degni Kota, and it's about 40 minutes drive from there. 40 minutes from Electronic City to Degni Kota, and about 10 minutes from Degni Kota to our farm. So this is a typical model of a farm. I mean, the way it would look. One second. So if you look at a typical farm, you will have these tall trees like I mentioned here, and then you will have these smaller trees, the canopy trees. The tall trees could be coconut, jamun, jackfruit. The smaller trees could be your mango, custard apple, and then the canopy trees, and the smaller trees would be a papaya, banana, drumsticks, and then you will have a stream running across your farm. So most of the farms will have a stream or will have a swale, like I mentioned, which will be there. So eventually it would be covered completely, and we don't do a typical row plantation. We understand the contour of the land, and across the contour of the land, we will do the planting. And the farm is also very close to the elephant watchtower, about 10-15 minutes drive to the elephant watchtower and the forest. So there's a beautiful overview of the forest because the land is actually at an elevated area. So when you plant the trees, like I said, the different type of trees that you can plant here are mentioned in the brochure, which could be your high trees, medium trees, and low trees. In fact, there is a wider list of trees. This is just giving you about 6 to 7 options, but we have in almost every category about 20 to 30 trees that have been set up, which you could choose from. But having said that, there will be at least 30% of the trees which will be non-productive in nature, which would also be planted, which would act as support trees for your land. And suppose you choose to do only timber, right, and you don't want to do a variety of fruit trees, you could do that, where we'll have 30% biodiverse trees and 70% could be the kind of timber trees that you would want. Timber would mean teak, mahogany, your Melia dubia, bamboo, sandalwood. Those are the type of trees that you could set up here. And yeah, so you could also build your own farmhouse. So we have a team which will help you with all the aspects in terms of permission, in terms of contractors, architects, right? So we have a design that is set up for the farm. So we'll give you the kind of facade that every landowner should take care of, and your internal layout can be the way you want. The other aspect, like I mentioned, you already have a farm app. So the moment you own a farm at Sambrahma, all your trees are mapped onto the mobile app. So you know what are the trees that are available and when are the fruits expected for each of those trees. The other aspect is the veggie basket that I mentioned about. Yeah, and we also have an animal interaction zone, which is set up in the farm, where we have various varieties of animals, which could be farm dogs, it could be cows, it could be rabbits that will be there for animal interaction. And we have an environmental education center where the team will help you understand animal behavior and help you interact with animals, and also understand sustainable ways of living off the grid in terms of farming and all of that. These are some of the outdoor activities that are there. So, like I mentioned, every farm of ours have cottages. In Sambrahma, we are building about 8 cottages currently. We may look at expanding this based on the areas that we are expanding. Right now it is 8, and we're looking to take it up to 12, because we're looking also at about additional 100 acres coming by the side of our farm. Right. So depending upon that, we will look at expanding the cottages. And as an individual, you have access to a certain number of nights in each of these cottages. And these are some of the other activities at Sambrahma. Yeah. So I hope you got an overview of this farm Sambrahma, and I would like to take up some questions now. We just have another 10 minutes left. So let's understand some of the questions. Akshay, can you put up the questions, please? Vegetable and fruit delivery to home is only applicable for customers of specific farms. Is that correct? See, once you're a farmland owner, you could subscribe to it. If you're a farmland owner in Abhiruddhi or in Eco Habitat, also you can subscribe to this aspect. We are allowing that because we are creating a vegetable garden in all our old farms and the new farms, and we are launching this facility on August 15th, which is on Independence Day. Hi team, what kind of trees will you plant it? Will there be any choice to select trees by plantation type? Yes, Yuvraj. So we will have a permaculture team, design team, which will help you on choosing the kind of trees that you would want. And like I mentioned, there will be 30% of the trees which will be a support tree, and balance 70% is up to you, the kind of trees that you would like to choose. Can farm owners be given a choice to put a low-cost and flexible farmhouse, something like a container home, etc., which are becoming popular of late, which we can transport and place it? Yes, you're most welcome to put the kind of farmhouse that you would want. But like I mentioned, we will have a small facade that you'll have to take care, so that all of these houses look uniform in terms of color code and the facade that will be expected of you to set up when you're setting up your farmhouse. So even container homes, we will have a design in terms of what kind of color theme and what kind of facade should be set up even for a container home. Also, why can't Hosachiguru connect farm owners to any commercial ventures when it comes to fruit farming? I mean, most welcome, but we are not into that. We're not into commercial fruit farming, because commercial fruit farming typically requires a lot more resources in terms of labor, water, in terms of all of those aspects. For us, we are looking at customers who are mostly looking at a farm life experience. See, the moment you do a commercial venture, you will have to look at chemical-based farming. You can't look at native varieties of fruits or native varieties of trees. Our focus has been to look at things which are more sustainable on an ecological basis rather than on a production basis. Any other questions? A quarter acre, how do you envision a small farmhouse and teak? See, in a quarter acre, which is about 10,890 square feet, you could almost have around 70 odd teak plants, 60 to 70 odd teak plants, and you can build a farmhouse at about 1,000 square feet. So it should be fine, and I think that is something that you can look at. But I would rather recommend a food forest on a quarter acre, where you have about 30 to 40 varieties of productive trees, and you get your veggies from the common vegetable garden, and then you continue to enjoy your farm. I would rather recommend that. Yes, Naveen. In fact, if you're speaking about bristlecone or Abhiruddhi, yes, we have sold out most of our farmlands, but we are adding new phases, right? So if you're looking at Abhiruddhi, we are likely to add about 15 acres in a new phase. So please be in touch with our team. We will have more plots coming out there. We also had launched Unnati towards North Bangalore near Chikballapur, and even there we are mostly sold out. We have about maybe 3 or 4 1-acre plots left there. But Sambrahma is a great farm. It's a lot more picturesque, and if you're in south part of Bangalore, it is anywhere about 1 hour to 90 minutes drive, depending upon where you stay. So you should certainly look at Sambrahma. Today we all buy lands everywhere, right? When you say is it a good investment, when we buy a 40-60 site or a 50-80 site in the outskirts of Bangalore, what are we looking for? Just appreciation. While you're getting your appreciation, you're also paying your yearly taxes. You're also paying your maintenance to the builder. So when a builder in the outskirts and he sells a plots, right? When he says AMC of common area, he's speaking about lands which is outside your plot, right? And you pay maintenance for it. But your own plot, you still maintain it by yourself, and you're just looking at appreciation. You will get better appreciation in these areas compared to the plots that are in the outskirts of the city, right? Because if you look at today, let's take an example of Bangalore. About 20-25 years back, say Sarjapur, Devnalli, Bannerghatta Road, all of these were 50-100 rupees a square feet. Today, they've gone up to 2,000 to 5,000 rupees a square feet, right? They've almost grown about 20x, 30x. Now, you can't expect to go to Devnalli and Sarjapur and expect 20x again, because they're already at a certain saturation level. But imagine going to the next areas which are 100 rupees, 200 rupees today, right? Which are yet close to Bangalore. And these are the areas which will have the potential to grow that 20x, 30x. But you can't expect the same thing to happen in areas which are already saturated, like Sarjapur or Devnalli today, which is already at 2,000, 3,000 rupees a square feet. So only 20 years back, the problem that people had going to say Devnalli or Sarjapur was, who's going to take care of my farm? If I buy a land there, how am I going to protect it? Those were the biggest questions. But here we are managing the farmland, you're experiencing it, and the real estate will automatically grow, right? So land is something that can't be manufactured. And if you're closer to Bangalore, you're sure that it is going to grow, right? That is one aspect. The second aspect is when you buy any real estate, all you have to remember is that there are various components for which you pay. For instance, if you pay 100 rupees in buying an apartment, 30 rupees goes towards the land, 70 rupees goes towards the building, which is the development of the land. And that development tends to be depreciating, right? Even in a layout. Say you buy a layout at 100 rupees, there is only 50 rupees that goes to the land and 50 rupees that goes to the development of the land. Let's take an example of Devnalli itself. You have new layouts which have come up there, right? Which are running at 5,000, 7,000 rupees a square feet. I think that Embassy Springs is running at 7,000 rupees a square feet. You take another layout which is in the same area, like Rahejas, right? Which is done about 18 years back. It's running at 2,500 rupees a square feet today. What is the difference? It is the same land, just that the development that you're paying for in Embassy is much higher because it's a new development and there are new themes to it, right? But come 20 years down the line, the development depreciates. What remains is the value of the land. So in a farming kind of a venture where you buy it in say Sambrahma or in Unnati, 80% of your money goes towards the land. The balance 20% goes towards agriculture, because agriculture is just 20, 30, 40 rupees a square feet in terms of development. The maximum amount of money goes towards the land itself. And land is the one which tends to appreciate. And in these areas, it tends to multifold much faster than the urban areas because of the lower per square feet rate, right? So you will certainly have better appreciation in these areas, and it's a better investment. You don't have to pay your yearly taxes. You have a better lifestyle because you have owned a farmland. You can give that to your children, and you can also experience farm. So I would certainly say yes, it's a better investment. Will each plot be fenced separately, or do we have an option of fencing it? Yeah, you have an option of fencing it if you want. Currently, we just mark the stones, and we have a barrier, which is a bund, which is created between the two plots. I think we also had one question on pricing. Okay, will the patta in our name and will it be subdivision? Yes. So every farm plot will be subdivided and the patta will be in your name when you buy it from us. And you don't buy it from a farmer at Hosachiguru, you buy it from Hosachiguru itself and then you take it. So I think there was a small question on pricing as well. Of course, you can WhatsApp and get the information. But just to give you an idea, a quarter acre is at about 19.5 lakhs in Sambrahma. And the beauty is that you can pay this over a period of 24 months. You pay 40% now and the balance over a period of 24 months without any interest, at 0% interest. This is a limited period offer. I would recommend that you all please take up this offer. And if you want 36 months, yes, there is an interest charge of 9%, but 24 months is an interest-free loan that you get from the company. Yeah, so there are bankers don't give loans for agriculture land because it is not considered a capital asset, like I mentioned, and it is not mortgageable. What is the support to sell timber? As a company, we continue to sell timber of various farms. So we will continue to provide that support, and there will be a small fee that we would charge for doing the same. What are the options if you don't want to continue after the first produce? The maintenance cost after 20 years will be very high. Yes, so at any point of time, you can start managing the land by yourself. All that you have to do is pay the common area maintenance, which is where we provide you water, access to all the common amenities, access to the lighting and the common electricity and the road maintenance. So that will be very minimal. Suppose you take, say, a 1 acre today in any of our farms. If it is just common area maintenance, you're going to pay about 2,000 rupees a month, which will give you access to water, security, and common amenities. So you don't have to you don't have to pay the full maintenance of your own land. You can manage it by yourself. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I think it's 1 hour into the farm talks, and I hope the information was informative. Please feel free to reach out to our team. The numbers have been displayed down in the scrolling bar, and we shall be happy to address any other further queries. Thank you so much.